come out of closed session?
Move. Second.
Motion made by Director Stewart, seconded by Director Washington. All in favor?
Aye.
We're out of closed session at 6:19, and there is no reportable action. And let's go ahead and call the meeting to order for the 6 o'clock session. And public comments, and I will dispense with the reading of the statute. But let the record show that we are opening the floor for public comments. At this time, anybody wishes to address the board, please come to the podium. And being as there are none, I will close public comments and move on to the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, motion was made by Vice President Webb, seconded by Director Stewart. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Consent calendar, motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion is made by Vice President Webb, seconded by Director Washington. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, presentations, RCSD's outreach efforts.
And I'll turn to Tom and turn the program to him.
Very good.
All right, I just need to get this started. Oh, you're fine. I'll stay there.
All right. My name is Tom Llewellyn, and with my partner Dave Saltman, we're ZXS Images. We're a small company out here, a partnership that provides communications consultations, media production, and the like. We have been recently engaged with RCSD to assist with your outreach. Originally, we were picked up to help with the wastewater treatment facilities, and we'll touch on that a little bit, and our scope's expanded a little bit recently. Essentially, when we were brought on, we were told that we are here to help increase transparency, reduce miscommunications, and that'll help with your staff's workload when everyone's on the same page, especially our customers. And specifically with that wastewater treatment facility, to show where the money goes. I know that me as a water customer, a lot of times my relationship with the water company is I pay my bill, water comes out of the wall. And we forget where that money goes, that it's building infrastructure, that it's investing in future water availability, that it's purchasing water banking and access to water. So that's part of the story that we're here to tell. Some of the outreach methods that we have been engaging in and that we will continue to engage in and that we plan on engaging in the future is direct community engagement, using the district's website, the newsletters that you publish, your social media account. Right now there's a Facebook account, and then also interfacing with traditional media. We've got 2 good newspapers here tonight that we work with to get information to. We also focus on internal communication. We talked about avoiding miscommunications, and one of the things that we need to do is unifying the message with those within our CSD as well, so that we're all telling the same story and that we're telling it using the same words. It'll help. It'll also help us talk to each other when we're using the same vocabulary. And the other thing that we do is information gathering and media monitoring. One of the things the first thing I do in the morning is actually I log on to the internet and I have a number of automated Google searches that looks for Rosamond Community Services District, RCSD, and it pulls up every story that's about you guys. I was talking to Dave, my partner, a couple days ago, and he asked how that was going. I said, well, Rosamond was mentioned in the AV press twice. It was in letters to the editor. The letters were not about RCSD, but the people that authored the letters were from Rosamond. So that's how, it's pretty sensitive. It picks stuff up. And that'll help us just keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on around the community. And we're going to expand that to social media and kind of look for the best way to really comb that as well. All right, so we've got a number of projects going on. We want to touch on 3. The first one is kind of a media audit and optimization. Dave and I have a vast experience in marketing as well as communications, public relations, teaching, and and the like. And kind of those are all exist within the same realm. So we're going to leverage that professional experience, feedback that we've gotten from board members, from those inside the district, as well as from some of the customers, and using the current environment, what's going on, what's the general sentiment of customers, whatnot, and we're going to use that to optimize how we're communicating externally and internally. Right now, we're focusing on the website and social media. It's kind of fun. When the district launched the current website, I was working for a different firm, and I actually helped you guys put that website together. So I'm learning how to ride that bike again, and getting inside there and using the different mechanisms to create pages and forms, and it's been interesting. It's something that when I set up, I didn't think I'd look at it again, but it's kind of like coming home to an old friend. So, working on that. Another thing that we're working on is improving internal and external access to media, and we're doing that through a standard Google Cloud storage drive. Allison can comment on how well that's working. She needed some pictures for a couple of her stories, and she was able to get on there and grab them because that's available. And so that allows our traditional media folks access to these stories that we're talking about that have been approved, of course, by the general manager whenever they need them. And those drone shots looked good in the paper. We appreciate it.
Really good.
And we got new ones for you, too. So, and the other thing we're doing with that is everything that we produce, all of our deliverables, we're also putting on the cloud storage on a different side that is not accessible to the public, but is accessible to Rcsd internal, and that allows general manager and staff access to what we've produced at any time. You don't have to call us, you have the link, you can go get it. And so it's really facilitating the communication. We're looking to refresh and improve the current channels like we were talking about on the website, social media, and the relationship with traditional media. We're also exploring some new channels. I don't want to commit to anything. We're looking at e-newsletters, which gets the message out to anyone we've got an email address for without having to spend the money on the printing. We're investigating some other social media venues. There's a few that have popped up recently that may be worthwhile and may be worth the investment. At the end of the day, we're looking for a good return on investment. We don't want to do it just to do it. We want to do it because it makes sense and it's going to accomplish something.
Will we be sending e-newsletters to our media?
It'll be publicly available, so we can add them to the mailing list. So there's a picture of the website, a picture of the Facebook page. They look good. We're going to make them look better. I know one of the things we've recently been tasked with is refreshing the pictures on the website. We're looking forward to that. All right. Sir.
Just real quick, touching on what Steve said, I've brought this up before, and to me it's very important. I don't want our newspapers, I mean, it's great that they can go on and grab stuff off of there, but I think we need to be more proactive, and that is go to them. You know, send them newsletters, send them information, so that way they've got it. And don't make them go looking for it, but actually reach out to Rosamond News and the Valley Press and says, here, and if you're interested, here's some information that, you know, we're doing right here. And then they can decide how they want to disseminate that information.
Commissioner, we are on the same page.
Very good.
Yeah. And I think we've seen that, a little bit of that already, and we will continue to do that. All right, wastewater treatment facility. This is what you guys originally hired us to do. We continue to visit 2 to 3 times a month. We're doing that drone surveying, get some good video. You've already seen the product of that with some of the updates that we've done to the board. We're going to continue to do those video updates when they make sense. I don't want to charge you for editing video if it doesn't make sense. And then posting updates to the website. So we were talking about some of those drone shots that we got. There it is in the beautiful Antelope Valley Press. I like that byline. Is that Allison Gallon? And then also on the website, if you haven't had a chance, please go check out these interactive panoramas that we've gotten up. I got up the one from the 6th of this month, and you can really start to see things taking form. I'm happy to show anyone that would like to see that, but that's available on the website under the Customers tab. You just look for WWTF for wastewater treatment facility. And we have the chronology of them there. The newest one is always at the top. Another big project that we've been working on is Senate Bill 998. We've been engaged in research. what it means for the district, and what's the best way to communicate what needs to happen because of it. We've already engaged in a couple of staff training meetings. We've developed some internal and external literature in the form of frequently asked questions, the staff training documents, and then also we're working on the next newsletter that will go out. We're just finishing that up. It's pretty close to being done. We've already done some website updates, specifically publishing the disconnection policy in the now state mandated translation languages, and that's the other thing we're working on is those translations. It's a heck of a bill. All right, so with that,
Let's stop you right there
Yes,
for a
sir.
moment and remind you to change the names of the wastewater treatment plant to the Rosamond Water Reclamation Plant.
happy to do it. I'll get it done
Please.
tonight. All right. With that, any questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm glad to see that you brought up SB 998. Is part of your contract going to be to, I noticed that you've got anything Rosamond popping up on your computer screen in the morning, but are you also going to be browsing CSDA, California, to, when other SB 998s pop up, that it doesn't concern Rosamond specifically, but
Correct.
it can affect Rosamond, that you can says, hey, you know what, I saw the article in the Sacramento Bee talking about this, it could have an impact, and get that information to Steve so he can, you know, run it down and see what's going on like that.
So we've been looking at a number of ways to do that, because unfortunately some of our keyword searches, you have to know what keywords to search for. Looking at the example of SB 998, you wouldn't know to search for it until it already happened. So what we're going to do is we're going to sit down with Steve, talk about some of the different organizations that are advocacy groups for community services district water providers, and we'll get subscriptions essentially to their news feed so we can see as they're publishing articles, and that'll keep us abreast of what's going on. And
In
so, yeah, that is
addition to
something
that,
we're gonna have.
if I'll bring it back to your attention, the approval of the minutes tonight from the last meeting, you approved that I can run for the board.
Mhm.
Having that position on the board does exactly what you're talking about,
Right.
to stay in tune with the advocacy on particular issues that would impact our district. And that is the value of being at the table.
Right.
So that, in addition to what Tom and Dave will be doing, that will help.
Yeah, because there's so many things out there.
Oh, there
and
is.
It's just,
There are.
you know, but, you know, water reuse, water in general, sewage treatment. There's so many things that come up to where it can be just a little kernel of information.
Correct.
And, but it's something that's really good to know, which I know Steve, you know, with CSDA, they have a more broader picture of, you know, special districts.
Mhm.
But it's kind of something just to, there's so much out there that we need to stay up on. I mean, I try to read as much as I can, you know,
Absolutely.
on the websites, to try to find something that looks like it could have an impact on us. I mean, it might be 4 or 5 years before it does have an impact, but it's better to know it now so you can prepare for it versus when it sneaks up on you.
Hindsight is 20/20, but foresight is usually cheaper. And that's one of the other things we do is we look at the agencies in the area. You know, that's part of when we're going through SB 998. The first thing we did is we looked at how are other districts addressing this. You know, how are they meeting these legal requirements? And some of those things were applicable to Rosamond, some of them were not. And that was one of the things we did. All right.
And on the board of directors of CSDA, what happens on a regular basis is the advocacy section of CSDA comes in and does a report on legislation that is forthcoming or legislation that we want to start. And we go through that. We're always updated on the progress of that legislation. So in any one year, if we have something like 998 come up, we'll express our displeasure with or our support for that piece of legislation and why. So people like Kyle Packard can advocate across the street our position. And we do that as an organization statewide.
All right.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Move on to director's reports and comments, and we'll start with director's letter.
The regional meeting for Aqua kind of had two main things they wanted to focus on. What kind of speakers they want, what the focus is that they want to have there. And there's a big concern, especially in Region 6 and 7, when you talk about Bakersfield, that the Aqua board directors and the Aqua staff and the Aqua leadership get into the ag community and understand what ag does. Get them out of their offices in Sacramento, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and get them, and they're talking about tours, developing tours so that they can be aware of what ag really is in the Central Valley. Because Region 6 and 7, just this last year, started the ag committee. There was no ag committee before. But their real concern is, and you see it every day, what are they going to do with the water? Are they going to keep cutting back on the water that goes to ag? And when they do, all of the production in the Central Valley and in Bakersfield just keeps getting cut back. And basically the Central Valley kind of feeds a large part of the world, not just California and the United States, but a large part of the world. And to kind of keep giving that up to environmentalists is very frustrating. And the environmentalists aren't in the ag community. They're in the offices in Seattle and in San Francisco and Sacramento. That's where the environmentalists are. They need to go out into the community. And I really appreciated this that came out. We're talking about communication. I guess we need Steve's picture on the on the paper that was in the bill. This came out in the bill. And I was at the AVEK meeting last night, and they're moving ahead with a number of projects that they're doing engineering work on. And they approved all of the engineering work. Maybe Gray can give a little bit more detail on that. But they're moving forward with their water bank plans. And I guess you could say that's good for the valley. And
Yeah.
it'd sure be great if we were incorporated into their plans.
During the presentation, they didn't give a lot of information. It was just basically a summary report. But what I could gather from it essentially is that they have been feeding their water banks with above ground aluminum piping for several years now. And that aluminum piping has, when he mentioned that it's cost them almost $1 million in repairs and replacement, sounds like there's a little bit of electrolysis going on with that aluminum piping and causing a lot of corrosion. So they have hired a consultant, what was that, for about $85,000, $98,000, to go in and basically put the design together to bury their percolation piping to where, in other words, they're going to put in their percolation piping. It's going to be underground, and then they'll pump the water to their water bank there. And instead of having the percolation is going to be taking place a little bit under the surface somewhat, and then percolate to the top. But
Is that injection?
huh?
Is that injection?
Well, it's, they weren't really clear on that. They either are going to either have the pipe delivered to the water bank site underground instead of above ground, and then have it through bubblers come up and then percolate on the surface. But either way, the main thing they're doing is they're trying to get rid of their above ground delivery system and get it to an underground delivery system.
If they're trying to negate the electrolysis,
Yeah.
they put it in the ground, they're gonna have to have cathodic protection in order to keep it, it's gonna do the same thing.
Yeah, and so it's, but you know, aluminum piping, it's tin can piping has always been used for temporary irrigation purposes because it will, fresh water will eat it up with electrolysis. Also, they touched on the delta, and it was a little concerning. Again, the report was very complex, and they just went over the highlights of it. I'd like to get a copy of the report that they gave to the state of California, but essentially, the delta is getting, because of rising sea levels, is getting saltwater, seawater incursion, more incursion into it. And so now their solution is, I guess they're going to be pumping an extra 900,000 acre feet, at least a proposal, into the delta for agricultural, for environmental purposes, and to help combat the salinity. They're showing the wet weather report doesn't look good. No rain at all for the month of February for the state of California, and January wasn't too good either. So, but they have enough not to where the reservoirs are basically full. Correct, Byron?
They're about a little bit below average
Yeah.
right now.
But they're
For this
just
time.
just a smidgen under average, and so the reservoirs this year are in pretty good shape. But their allotment did go from their historical average of 62% down to 59%. And they didn't really explain why that was, but it had been at 62% for how many years did they say?
Quite a long time, and it's a consistent pattern, but it's not over this year, it's historically. So you take 50 years, and there's been a decrease of about 2% over 50 years.
Yeah. So, you know, it was, it was very interesting listening to it, and, but the bottom line is we're in good shape right now with water. They have plenty of carryover to see, even if the dry weather continues, AVEK has plenty of carryover water to meet all of their needs for this year. And so, it was a good report. And with that, we will move on to Director Stewart.
I don't really have much of a report. I was gonna ask Steve to look into, I got a notification the other day that the Tri-State Seminar, it's from California, Arizona, and Nevada, will be held this year in August 11th, 12th, and 13th. I've gone to it in the past, it's been a couple of years, very informative. It has to do with sewer distribution. And it gets together with an abundance of municipalities, so I think it'd be something either staff or some of the board would like to attend, because I think it's very informative. And then when I've gone there, I've sat there and talked to other operators, and just, you know, you share ideas, but you sit in classes. I've attended, and they talk about new EPA regulations coming out, and they might even have some, I haven't seen the agenda yet, but they still might have some of the things.
This is Tri-State.
It's called Tri-State Seminar. So, definitely, I think that there's an early bird registration, which if it was something that we decided we're gonna go to, we
It's not till August.
August, yeah.
Is it mainly water or water ends?
Water and sewer water. So I know that we were talking about more sewer stuff since that's one of our responsibilities. I think some of the other board members would like to attend, and I know the public works director and I have talked about it at least once. So something to look into, please.
Director Washington,
I don't have anything.
Vice President Webb,
Thanks for being here, folks. Nothing to report.
and I would like to thank everybody for being here, and I've already gave my report. And with that, we will go on to general council update, and there is none. And general manager update, Steve?
Yeah, I want to touch on the aqua field trips that Byron mentioned. I think finally people are starting to take notice. When I was on the CSDA board in the past and was president, we started the field trips for legislators, staff, and legislators. It's a 2-day field trip. We take them in buses to visit special districts throughout the state so they can be aware of what it is we do. And we started doing that. Now it's starting to spread out, and that's a good thing. The more we can educate those lawmakers on what we do, the better off we're gonna be. Because then they can realize the impacts when they pass legislation.
Don't get out of their office.
That's
Just don't get out of their office.
And by and large, in the legislature, when a legislator sees a bill that comes through, generally, most of the pre-work has been done by staff, and it's handed to them. They read it, they're explained by staff what it is. Very important to get staff out there so the staff knows what it is we do. As is important as it is the legislator. That way we can get that dialogue going back and forth. They call CSDA more to ask advice on legislation and how the impacts would come about. So it's working. And it's been since about, I think it was 2014 was the first year we started the field trips. I'm glad to see Aqua doing the same thing. The other thing, I had one other thing and I lost my train of thought. So I'll just go on to my staff report that's before you. The One Water Nevada Advanced Water Treatment Technologies, I had the pleasure of having a personal tour by the program director, and the on-site program director led the tour along with the big poopah. Anyway, we saw their demonstration project on how they're taking wastewater and to what extent they're taking it and how clean they can get the water. Now they're doing it for a direct injection, and direct injection, as many of us know, is a no-no in our area. You don't want to direct inject water into our aquifer without it being filtered and the proper type of water. So they're trying to develop a process to take our wastewater and clean it up to a point where you can put it straight into the aquifer. And in many cases, what they have done is they have cleaned this water cleaner than the water that we're producing for our communities. So it's quite the process. It's a 4-step process. It's filtration, it's ozone, it's ultraviolet light, and granular activated carbon for washing it up or cleaning it up. And so they have gone through this. They've tested various stages and how much they have to, how long they have to put it under the ozone, how much ultraviolet, when it breaks through, the whole 9 yards. And it right now in this study project, they have 3 trailers, and the process goes through a semi-trailer. The first one, then it goes to the second stage, and then the final stage. And it's extremely educational. Now, this was brought to me by a friend and colleague of President Wood in San Diego when we were at one of the conferences down there. And we met, they introduced us to this project that we had seen in one of the presentations. And I'm glad I did. It gives me a lot of ideas to look at, various processes. And the big elephant in the room for me was, okay, this is all fine and good, what do we do with PFAS? So they have a solution to that, and I wanted to let the board know also, and that was the thing that I lost my train of thought, is I just asked Ms. V to schedule me for a PFAS seminar by phone. Webinar, and it sounds like a really good one. So anybody that wants to attend with me,
Participate in that as well.
it'll be here. When do you recall the
I
date?
think it's March 15th or somewhere around there.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I saw it. I was gonna ask if I could
Yeah, March
be
15th.
put on that.
Yeah, so I wanted to give that opportunity to everybody we can watch it out.
15th, that's Sunday.
That's a Sunday.
Lot of good,
Get that wrong day.
lot of good questions
It's CSDA.
can come out of that, and a lot of processes on how to deal with it. So that's some of the things that I wanted to report, and President Wood and myself were scheduled to attend another meeting on with One Water Nevada, and find out a little bit more at one of their seminars, but schedules prevented us from attending. And that's the end of my report.
Steve, on the, touch on this thing with that, that you went up to Reno for, and I would have liked to have been able to go, but my schedule didn't allow me to go, but, you know, understanding a little bit about the GAC and listening to the PFAS presentation that we had, that GAC is one of the recommended cleaning agents for the PFAS and PFOS as well. So, but when we originally started talking about this, it was utilizing our existing tertiary treatment plant that we have in place now and adding the GAC to the end of, as it comes out of the UV, it would go into the GAC for the ultrafiltration, and which is better than NBR. Is it, what I needed to ask, I don't know if you asked this or not, but when it comes out of the UV, it's subject to Title 22 regulations. When it comes out of the GAC, is it subject to Title 22 regulations, or is it under a different type of title regulation as far as recycled water?
That's a good question. I didn't ask that, and I would assume that it would have the same, at least for the time being. And I think this is what this demonstration project is doing, is trying to prove up and to answer why it should be less regulated. And because it's taken it to that next major step, and that polishes it up and cleans it even much more. So I don't think at this point they have differentiated that yet, but I can't be certain.
Because I can look at it this way with our denitrified secondary, if it comes to a point that we have to do something more additional to it.
We've got it.
This type of system here is that we wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. that we could simply expand our UV and our filters to accept the biolac water and then your GAC, and then let the effluent from the GAC percolate into the ground and do it that way as well.
Right. In our process, we have several hundred feet, or 100 and some feet of filtering that goes on after our process. In their case, they're doing this for direct injection. And so they're taking it to that nth step in order to accomplish that. When they got their license to do this, they had to prove up to the state their project and what they were going to do. They had to develop the regulations for the state, and the state had to buy off on those regulations that they were going to have to live by, and then prove up the fact that they could produce the quality of water that they said that they were going to produce. So your point's well taken. I mean, we're halfway there, or probably more than halfway. We have one more step, I think, that we would have to add, and that's the GAC.
Right, and that's what made this so interesting, that we could actually be to the super, almost to the reverse osmosis level of treatment
Right.
for very little expense on our part,
So
or minimal expense.
one of the things that the director does, he's the one that brought all the entities in the Reno area, the Truckee, which he told me politically they didn't talk. But under this situation, they all started coming together and talking about the water situation. That's what he does, is brings the people together. So if we were to get a demonstration project to be done here through Brian and through Rick, he said he would come down and coordinate setting up all the water entities in the area, and the college, the university, extension, and all of those things, in order to get the buy-in from the whole community to understand what it is we were doing and how we were cleaning the water. So that's ultimately what they want to achieve. I don't know if that's something that we want to take on.
I would definitely like to entertain having Mr. Warren and Brian, come and meet and go look at the facilities and kind of give us a feasibility assessment, and then plus a benefit assessment.
Mhm. So I think it's a great project. Rick was straightforward. He said that California has some good advanced water treatment. Santa Clara, Orange County, they've been doing it for years. And so a lot of what they did, he went and reviewed, they talked with them, the pluses, the minuses, and this project is expanding on that.
Well,
taking it forward.
Steve, the one in Orange County, I mean, what I liked about theirs, their treatment plant, it's actually the water plant. And they bring it across from the treatment plant into the water plant, and then they bring it on in. That whole Orange County region, they inject, pull it out. So I guess he did pick up on that, because I think if folks had a chance to go down to Orange County and look at theirs, they're much bigger. They have all those southern counties participating. But maybe we could see what they're doing down there, and we all get on board up north here.
Yeah, but people been drinking that Disneyland water for years.
For years, absolutely, absolutely. Well, that sure is a viable concept.
Yeah. So,
Okay, very good. Any questions of our gentleman? Thank you, Steve. Okay, with that, we will go on to Assistant General Manager, and not here.
she's sick. She had to go home yesterday, and she's still sick today.
Okay. And Consultant Brad?
No update from finance. Everything's looking good.
Perfect. And I see that John and Brock's on vacation.
No, actually, they're both in training. I thought Brock was on vacation. He's going on vacation sometime. He was supposed to go in November and he's put it off, so I thought he was on vacation, but they're both in Covina at a leadership training. And John told me this morning, he said, Steve, he said, I don't know who booked this for me, but he said, and I'm not much on seminaring, but he said, this is the best one he has ever attended. He said, it is worth sending them to. So.
Good. Perfect.
Maybe we need to take note of that and make sure that next year, if they do it again, we can have maybe some other people down a little bit farther, start grooming the next set, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Okay, I think the webinar you were looking at is on 3/11/2020.
What's that?
3/11/2020.
Is the PFAS? That's,
No, this is for SB 998,
That's,
new restrictions.
oh, yeah.
This is for CSDA.
that's a regular meeting on that evening.
PFAS, I didn't see anything in here on the, but if you got one on PFAS, count me in on that, because I definitely want to participate in that.
PFAS is on the 15th.
15th is Sunday, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, the March
My
15th.
phone with it.
Yeah, March 15th is Sunday.
I'll have to look it up. I'll send an email out to everybody. Also, Ben, I'll send you when I look into that seminar,
Yeah.
I'll respond to you. Also.
Please, appreciate it.
Alrighty then. And with that, have a motion for adjournment.
Move.
Second. Motion was made by Director Stewart, seconded by Director Washington. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 7:01.